Sairam students, let's begin with the today's session of class 8. We are doing history. We have already started with chapter number 7 of history, civilizing the native, educating the nation. Children, today we are doing the second part of this chapter. Let's go through the content of our chapter. In our first session, that is the first part of this chapter, we learnt about the introduction. Then we saw how the British saw education, right? In that we saw many subtopics were there. How the British saw education, children, in that you have learnt about the subtopic, the tradition of Orientalism. What did we see in this actually? What was the see? They want British officials, they wanted Indians to be educated, civilized, and even they made into what the British believe were the good subjects as per them, right? So what did they thought of? They thought of having new type of education system here in India. Okay, so what was that in the tradition of Orientalism? We saw that the William Jones, he arrived in Calcutta, right? He was a linguist because he was knowing many languages. Okay, we saw he was very much interested in learning about the Sanskrit also. He started spending many hours with the Pandits in teaching Sanskrit, grammar, as well as the poetry. And he also wants to study the ancient Indian text on law, philosophy, religion, politics, and even other sciences, right? But it was not only the Jones, he was behind discovering the interest that was shared by many other officials also, those who were living in Calcutta. We saw the other two Englishmen, that is Henry Thomas Colebrook and Nathaniel Hillard. These two also, they were also busy in discovering the ancient Indian heritage. Correct? Then we saw these all three together. Together with this set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal, and even they started a journal that was called as the Asiatic Researches, right? Then we saw the Jones and the Colebrook together. They wanted like the ancient that the Indian civilization had attained its glory, but in the ancient past. So, but it had declined now. So they just want to rediscover all the sacred and the legal texts that were produced in the ancient period in our country. So they also want to know about the ancient laws, the real ideas and the laws of the Hindus and Muslims. Then finally, with the idea of this, what they did, with this object in their view, they set up the madrasa in Calcutta in the year 1781. For what they did, to promote the study of Arabic, Persian and Islamic law. And even the Hindu college was established in Banaras in the year 1791. Why? To encourage the study of ancient Sanskrit text that would be useful for the administration of our country. Okay, so this is what we have seen they have done together, because what they were believing that to win a place in the hearts of the natives, then only they will be accepting this British officials as the rulers. They will be respected. Indians will be respecting them, because once they have got the place in their heart, then only they will be able to administer very well on them. And even the education policies of the Indians were also interested in that Orientalism, that is the past studies, okay, related to the scholarly knowledge of the language as well as the culture of Asia. So children, you all remembered we saw the meanings of these terms: Orientalist, Munshi, vernacular. These meanings you have got in your textbook also. Then we saw not all officials shared these views. Okay, which views? With the views that William Jones, that Colebrook and Hellert they were having. Many were very strong in their criticism of the Orientalist. Okay, so now in this next topic we are going to learn about that. Grave errors of the past. Error word means you all know very well. The errors means the shortcomings that were there in the culture of the East. Now this will be shown in this topic. Okay, so from the early 19th century, we have seen many British officials. They began to criticize the Orientalist vision of learning. Orientalist vision is based on the scholarly knowledge of the language as well as the culture of East Asia. Okay, so, what did they say? They said that knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thought. This was the idea of the British officials, those who were criticizing the Oriental learning, those who were not supporting Orientalism, those who were against this. They said these words that the knowledge of the East was full of errors and unscientific thought. They also argued that then what they were saying, this Eastern literature was non serious and light hearted. So they argued that it was wrong on the part of the British to spend so much effort in encouraging the study of Arabic and Sanskrit language and literature. This is what the idea of these British officials those were criticizing. They were arguing that it is a waste of time, it is wrong on the part of the British to spend so much efforts in encouraging these languages. That means Arabic, Sanskrit, and other this and even they were thinking like the it was wrong on their part, and even the Sanskrit language and literature should also not be considered as the correct one. They were thinking all these as the wrong from the on the part of the British officials. Now here James Mill. You have learnt about the James Mill in your previous chapters also, if you all remember. So James Mill was one of those who attacked the Orientalists. Attacked the Orientalists means he was the one who criticized this Orientalism. He was not the supporter of Orientalism. So the British effort, he declared, should not be to teach what the natives wanted. Natives means what the Indians wanted or what they respected. He doesn't care about the respect also from the Indians in order to please them. Because this is what Jones and everybody, they were with the mindset like they should please the natives. They should please the Indians and they should win a place in their heart. And then along with them, they should adopt the ancient culture of the Indian, right? But this James Mill, he was totally opposite of what the Jones and Colebrook and Hallett they were thinking. He was thinking that to teach what the natives wanted or what they respected in order to please them and win a place in their heart, this should not be the aim of education. He was against this. That is the reason he was criticizing this Orientalism. Then, what was, according to him, the aim of education ought to be to teach what was useful and practical. This is what James Mill's views. Okay, his aim of education was to teach what is the practical as well as the useful to the natives. So Indians should be made familiar with the scientific and the technical advances. What he was suggesting, that Indians, that the natives should be made familiar with what? With the scientific and the technical advances that the West had made. West means that the Britishers had made, okay, rather than what the poetry and the sacred literature of the Orient. So he was totally against the poetry and the sacred literature of the Orientalism. He was supporting the Western education. He wanted Indians should also be familiar with that type of scientific and technical advances. Then only they will be civilized. This is what he thought. So by the 1830s, the attack of the Orientalists became sharper. It became more sharper. First was the James Mill to criticize, okay. Then one of the most outspoken and influential of such critics of the time was Thomas Babington Macaulay. So the another one who wants to criticize here was Thomas Babington Macaulay. Even he was an outspoken and influential person, and he was such a critic for the Orientalism. Okay, what did he say? He saw India as an uncivilized country that needed to be civilized. As per him, India was an uncivilized country and that needs to be civilized. So what did he say after that? He thought that, what did Macaulay say? Once he passed a statement, India is an uncivilized country and it need to be civilized. So he said no branch of Eastern knowledge, according to him, should be compared to what England had produced. It means he is comparing our language, that is our Indian culture, that is the Eastern knowledge, to with this in Western culture. Okay, so he said no branch of Eastern knowledge, according to him, could be compared to what England had produced. Who could deny, declared Macaulay, that? What did he say finally? Listen to that. A single shelf of a good European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Arabic. Now, children, try to understand what he has commented here. He said a single shelf of a good European library. See, you all know in our libraries we have the where we keep the books, we have the shelves there. Okay, he has compared our native literature of India. He has compared the whole native literature of India with that single shelf of a good European library, and that too he is saying is not is worth as per that of. So it's a comparison like the single shelf of a good European library is same as that of the native literature of India and Arabic. Now you can understand how firmly he was criticizing that Orientalism, right? So he urged that the British government in India should stop wasting public money on what? In promoting Oriental learning, because it is of no practical use. This is what he again commented, that the British government in India is wasting money and they should stop all that promoting the Oriental learning because it doesn't have any practical use. So again with the great energy and passion that he was having, because he was in the beginning only we saw he was an influential critic here, right? So Macaulay emphasized the need to teach the English language. Now finally the main point has come. He wanted Indians also to learn the English language. That should be included in Indian culture also. Then what did he say? He felt that the knowledge of English would allow Indians to read some of the finest literature the world had produced. This is what he thinks about the knowledge of English. It is one of the finest literature. Whereas what did he say about the native literature of India? He said it is worth as that of a single shelf of the European library, right? But whereas he has told that the finest literature of this England is really worth for the Indians also to understand. So it would make them aware of the developments in Western science and technology. Then he said it is like teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing people, because as per Macaulay, the people are uncivilized. Indian people were uncivilized, right? So he suggested the teaching of English could thus be a way of civilizing people, changing their taste, values, and culture. So after that, following the Macaulay's minute, the English Education Act of 1835 was introduced, because he was a very strong critic here, right? That is the reason finally the English Education Act of 1835 was introduced on his command. Then what happened, that the decision was to make English the medium of instruction for higher education, and even to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions. You all have learnt about the Oriental institutions in your previous session, right? We saw about the zones and the Colebrook and the Hellet. They all, what did they do? They set up the madrasa in Calcutta and the Banaras Sanskrit College. Okay, so that because they were the lovers of the Oriental learning. Okay, They were the supporters of that Indian culture. But whereas Macaulay he was a strong critic here, even where James Mill was also one of the critic here, right? So finally the decision was to stop, to make the English the medium of instruction for higher education, and to stop the promotion of Oriental institutions like the Calcutta Madrasa and the Banaras Sanskrit College. Then not only this, what did he say? These institutions means our Oriental institutions, they were seen as the temples of darkness. Children, madrasa is like, it is the place where the children were learning the things, right? So it has been given the place to worship, where the children were learning. Because see, when we go to schools and colleges, we worship that place because that is like a temple for us. Whereas this Macaulay, he has said, these all British officials, those who were the critics of our Oriental learning, they said these institutions were seen as the temples of darkness, and they were also that were falling off themselves into decay. This is what the comment of that officials, those who were criticizing. So finally they said the English textbooks now began to be produced for schools. So children, here we have completed the today's topic, that is grave errors of the East. Now let's begin with a quiz here. Children, your quiz is based on the first session as well as the today's session. That is the two parts together, okay? Who set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal? Is that the William Jones? Is that the Nathaniel Hillard? Or is that the Henry Thomas Colebrook? Or all of these? Yes, children, I think you all remember it is all of these. The English Education Act was introduced in the year. In which year it was introduced? Was it 1835? Was it 1781? Was it 1900? Or was it in 1791? Children, which was that year? Yes, it was 1835. Munshi is a person who can read, write and teach what? Sanskrit, English, Persian or all of these languages. If you all remembered, in the beginning of a session we saw about this, right? Munshi is a person who can read, write and teach Persian. Hindu College was set up at Banaras to encourage the study of ancient Hindi text. Is it true or false? Children, I'll repeat again. Hindu College was set up at Banaras to encourage the study of ancient Hindi text. Was it the Hindi text? No, that was the Sanskrit text, right? So this statement is false. William Jones had a respect for ancient culture. Yes, he was a very strong supporter of the ancient culture of India, right? Is it true or false? True. So children, in today's session, we have completed with the second topic of the main topic, grave errors of the East. We saw the critics here in this, those who were criticizing the Oriental learning, right? Now, in the next session, children will be learning about the education for commerce and the next topic. So children, till then go through this slide and learn all the important meanings that has been given to you in this slide as well as in the previous slide. Okay, so children, see you in the next session with the next topic of this chapter. That will be our part 3. Okay, till then children, take good care of your health.